The stars had always been kind to the people of New Dawn. For 37 years, the colony on Seven had grown from a small group of farmers into a busy town of 12,000 people. The planet was beautiful. Green forests covered the hills. Clear rivers ran through the valleys. The air smelled sweet, like flowers after rain. Governor Park stood at his office window and watched the morning sun rise over the fields. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had been the leader of New Dawn for 15 years, and he was proud of what they had built together. No wars, no hunger, just peaceful people living simple lives under alien skies. The best part of New Dawn was the children. There were 2,300 of them, and they filled the colony with laughter and noise. Every morning, they walked to the Central Learning Complex, a big white building in the middle of town. There, they learned about science, history, and the stars their grandparents had crossed to reach this world. Was 8 years old. She had long black hair that her mother braided every morning and eyes that sparkled when she talked about spaceships. She wanted to be a starship captain when she grew up. She wanted to fly between the stars and discover new worlds. Her little brother was only 5. He followed everywhere. When she walked to school, he held her hand. When she sat in class, he sat beside her. Sometimes pretended to be annoyed, but secretly she loved being a big sister. Their teacher was a woman of 34 with a gentle voice and a warm smile. She taught mathematics, but she also taught her students about courage and kindness. When children were scared, she told them stories. When they were sad, she listened. The children loved her and she loved them back. Lieutenant was the head of colony security. She was 41 years old with short hair and a scar on her left cheek. Once, she had been a soldier in the Earth Defense Force. She had fought in terrible battles in the Outer Rim. She had watched her friends die. After the war, she came to New Dawn to find peace. She kept her skills sharp, but she prayed every night that she would never need to use them again. New Dawn had no army. It had only 12 security officers with light weapons. Governor Park believed in diplomacy. He believed that talking could solve any problem. The colony had never been attacked, and he saw no reason to prepare for war. Far away, in the dark space between galaxies, the Dominion was watching. There were insects. They stood on 2 legs like humans, but their bodies were covered in hard shells the color of dried blood. They had 4 arms, each ending in sharp claws. Their eyes were black and showed no emotion. They did not understand mercy. They did not understand kindness. They only understood power. High Warlord was the ruler of the. He sat on a throne made from the bones of his enemies and looked at images of human colonies. His advisors had told him that humans were spreading too fast. They were building too many worlds. Soon, they might become a threat. Did not want to wait for that day. He wanted to break the humans now, while they were still weak. They have no warriors, one of his generals said. Their colonies have no defenses. They are soft creatures who care too much about their young. His mouth twisted into something like a smile. They're young, he repeated. Yes, that is how we will break them. They had done this before. 17 times they had attacked other species, and every time they targeted the children first. It was their way of showing complete power. When parents saw their children taken, their spirits broke. They always surrendered, always. Chose New Dawn because it was perfect, a small colony, far from Earth, full of children. He would take the young ones, kill some of them on camera, and broadcast the images across human space. The humans would see that their children were not safe. They would understand that resistance was pointless. They would submit. He sent 47 warships to 7. On New Dawn, it was a morning like any other. The children walked to school. Parents went to work in the fields. Governor Park read reports in his office. Lieutenant checked the security sensors as she did every day. At 9:47 a.m. colony time, the sensors screamed. Looked at her screen and felt her heart stop. 47 ships had appeared in orbit. They were not human ships. They were not any ship she recognized, but their weapons were charging. She hit the emergency alarm. Across the colony, red lights began to flash. A voice spoke from every speaker. Alert! Alert! Unknown vessels in orbit. All citizens proceed to emergency shelters. Governor Park ran to the command center. "What is happening?" he demanded. "Ships," said. Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. 47 of them. They're not responding to any communication. Park grabbed the radio. "Unknown vessels, this is Governor Park of New Dawn Colony. We are a peaceful settlement. We mean no harm to anyone. Please respond." Silence. He tried again. "We have no weapons. We are not a threat. Please tell us what you want." Silence. Then the first began falling from the sky. Watched them on the screen. They were heading straight for the Central Learning Complex, straight for the children. "No," she whispered. Then she grabbed her weapon and ran. In Teacher's classroom, the children heard the alarm. Some of them started to cry. Little grabbed his sister's hand and squeezed tight. "What's happening?" he asked. Did not know, but she tried to sound brave. "It's okay," she said. "Everything will be okay." Teacher stood up and faced her students. Her heart was pounding, but she kept her voice calm. "Children, we need to stay together. Follow me. Stay quiet. Hold hands." She led them toward the back of the building, toward the maintenance tunnels that might lead to safety. Outside, they landed. Their doors opened, and they stepped onto human soil for the first time. Governor Park watched from the command center as the aliens walked toward the school. He was still trying to talk to them, still begging for an answer. He did not understand. He could not understand. They had not come to talk. They had come to teach humanity a lesson. But humanity was about to teach them a lesson too, a lesson written in fire and blood, a lesson that would echo across the galaxy for 1,000 years. The thought they knew what humans were, they were wrong. They were so very, very wrong. Moved like shadows through the hallways of the Central Learning Complex. Their clawed feet clicked against the floor. Their black eyes searched every room. They were looking for children. Teacher had managed to get 43 students into her classroom at the back of the building. She had locked the door and pushed heavy desks against it. Now she stood in front of her students, her body between them and the door. "Stay quiet," she whispered. "Stay behind me." Held her brother close, was crying softly, and she stroked his hair. She said, "It's okay, I'm here." But it was not okay. They could all hear the sounds outside, screaming, breaking glass, strange clicking voices that did not sound human. Then the door shook. Something was trying to get in. The children whimpered. Some of them covered their eyes, but Teacher did not move. She grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall. It was not much of a weapon, but it was all she had. The door broke open. 2 soldiers pushed through, their red shells gleaming in the light. They were tall and terrible. They looked at the children with their empty black eyes. Teacher did not hesitate. She swung the fire extinguisher at the first's head. The metal connected with a crack. The alien fell. She swung again at the second one. It stumbled back. "Run," she screamed at the children. "Through the window, run." Some of the children ran. They climbed through the broken window and fled into the chaos outside. But more were coming. Teacher kept fighting. She fought with her hands, her feet, everything she had. She killed 2 of them before they killed her. The last thing she saw was, and climbing through the window, they were alive. Her students were escaping. It was enough. Across the colony, Lieutenant led her small security team in a desperate fight. There were only 12 of them against hundreds of, but they fought anyway. They fought for every meter of ground. They fought for every child they could save. Had found a group of children hiding in the maintenance tunnels. 107 of them, scared and crying. She organized them into lines and led them toward the emergency bunkers. "Move fast," she told them. "Don't look back, just keep moving." A plasma bolt hit her shoulder. The pain was terrible, like fire burning through her flesh. But she did not stop. She kept firing at the behind them. She kept the children moving. By the time they reached the bunker, had killed 17 aliens. Her weapon was almost empty. Her vision was blurring from blood loss. But the children were safe. 107 children would live because of her. She collapsed against the bunker wall and let the darkness take her. They completed their mission in less than 2 hours. They had taken 847 children prisoner. They had killed 412 others. They had filmed everything. High Warlord appeared in a broadcast that was sent to every human world. Behind him, children cried in metal cages. Some of them were hurt. All of them were terrified. Humans said, his voice was cold and sharp. Your offspring now belong to the Dominion. You will submit to us completely. You will give us your worlds, your resources, your technology. If you refuse, we will kill these children slowly. We will make you watch. You have 10 days to respond. The broadcast ended. On New Dawn, Governor Park fell to his knees. He had tried so hard to make peace. He had believed that words could solve anything. Now he understood how wrong he was. His colony was burning. His people were dead or taken, and there was nothing he could do. But the broadcast did not just reach New Dawn. It reached every human colony, every space station, every ship, and it reached Earth. Fleet Admiral Lee was 67 years old. He had served humanity for 50 years. He had fought in 3 wars. He had seen terrible things, but nothing had prepared him for this. He watched the broadcast in his office on Luna Base. He watched children being murdered. He watched them being thrown into cages like animals. He watched the alien warlord smile as he made his demands. Admiral Lee watched the broadcast 3 times. His aide commander stood beside him. She had never seen her commander cry. She had never seen him show fear. But now she saw something in his eyes that frightened her more than tears or fear. She saw certainty, cold, absolute certainty. "Sir," she asked quietly, "what are your orders?" Admiral Lee stood up slowly. His hands were steady. His voice was calm. But there was something in it that made Commander step back. "Wake the sleeping giants," he said. Commander's eyes went wide. "Sir, the Omega Fleet, they've been mothballed for 200 years. The Council banned their use after the Unification Wars." "I don't care what the Council banned," Admiral Lee said. "Those are our children, Commander, and I am going to get them back. Every single one of them. And when I do, I am going to make sure no one ever threatens a human child again." He walked to his console and began typing commands. Across human space, ancient ships began to wake. Reactors that had been cold for centuries began to glow. Weapons that had been sealed by treaty began to power up. In a hidden base deep inside an asteroid, the HSS Retribution opened its eyes. 5 kilometers of metal and fire. The most powerful warship humanity had ever built. Its captain received his orders while standing at his daughter's grave. She had been 9 years old when pirates killed her. That was 15 years ago. Had spent every day since then preparing for a moment like this. He read his orders. He watched the broadcast. Then he walked back to his ship and began to prepare. The Terran Congress met in emergency session. The vote for total war was unanimous. Every representative, every senator, every voice. Not one person spoke against it. Humanity was going to war, not for territory, not for resources, not for power. For children. And the galaxy was about to learn what that meant. On the prison ship carrying the captured children, a 13-year-old girl named Han was recording everything on her hidden device. Her translation implant was working, processing the aliens' conversations. She heard them talking about their destination. She heard coordinates. And she made sure to remember every single one. Somewhere in the darkness of space, humanity's ancient warships were gathering. The sleeping giants were awake, and they were hungry for blood. The sleeping giants were not normal ships. They were monsters made of metal and hate. 200 years ago, during the Unification Wars, Humanity had built 12 dreadnoughts so powerful that they scared even their own creators. Each ship was 5 kilometers long. Each ship carried weapons that could crack planets open like eggs. Each ship was crewed by the hardest, coldest soldiers humanity had ever produced. After the wars ended, the Terran Council decided these ships were too dangerous. They sealed them away in hidden bases. They locked their weapons. They hoped no one would ever need them again. Now Admiral Lee was unlocking them all. Captain walked through the corridors of the HSS Retribution and felt the ship coming alive around him. Lights flickered on. Computers hummed. The great engines began to warm up after 2 centuries of sleep. His crew was gathering. They were not young soldiers. They were veterans, men and women who had seen the worst of humanity and come out the other side. They had all lost someone. They all understood what was happening. Lieutenant was his weapons officer. She had lost her son in a colony raid 10 years ago. Engineer had lost his entire family to slavers. Dr. IM had spent 20 years treating wounded soldiers and had seen enough dead children to fill her nightmares forever. They did not need speeches. They did not need motivation. They had all watched the broadcast. They all knew what they had done. Captain gathered them in the bridge and spoke simply. "We're going to get our children back, every single one, and we're going to make sure this never happens again. Any questions?" There were no questions. Across human space, the response was the same everywhere. Factories that made farming equipment began making weapons. Ships that carried cargo began carrying soldiers. Men and women who had never held a gun walked into recruitment offices and asked for training. They had expected humans to be afraid. They expected them to cry and beg. They expected surrender. They did not understand what they had awakened. Doctor was humanity's greatest expert on alien biology. She was 53 years old, with gray-streaked hair and glasses that always seemed to be sliding down her nose. She had spent her life studying alien creatures, learning how they lived and how they died. Now she was studying the Admiral Lee had given her one order: find their weaknesses. She had been working for 3 days without sleep. Her lab was covered with images, data, samples, and finally she had found what she was looking for. The queen mothers, she told the Admiral. They can only reproduce through queen mothers. They're special females who lay all the eggs. Without them, no new can be born. How many are there? Admiral Lee asked. 112. In the entire Dominion. If we destroy them, the species ends. Admiral Lee nodded slowly. What about physical weaknesses? Doctor pulled up images on her screen. Their shells are strong but have 17 weak points, joints, eye sockets, the base of the skull. Our weapons can penetrate these areas easily. They're strong, but they're not indestructible. The Admiral looked at the data for a long moment. Then he said, "Prepare a full briefing for all ship captains. I want every soldier to know exactly where to aim." Meanwhile, on the Avchitra Prime, the captured children were being held in a massive prison complex. They were kept in cold metal cells with barely enough food and water. They did not care about their comfort. They only cared about keeping them alive long enough to use as bargaining chips. Had become a leader among the children. She was only 8 years old, but she was brave and smart. She organized the older children to help take care of the younger ones. She made sure everyone shared their food. She told stories at night to help them sleep. But was doing something else too. She was watching, she was listening, she was learning. The guards talked freely around the children because they thought humans were stupid animals. They did not know that translation implant was recording everything. They did not know she was memorizing the layout of the prison, the guard rotations, the locations of weapons. One day, an overseer came to look at the human children. He was curious about them. He had never seen humans before. He stopped in front of Cell and looked at her with his black eyes. "You are small," he said in broken human standard. "Weak. Why do you not cry?" Looked back at him without fear. Because you made a mistake. The overseer tilted his head. What mistake? You hurt us, said simply. You hurt human children. Our parents are coming now. The overseer made a clicking sound that might have been laughter. Your parents are farmers, merchants. They have no ships, no weapons. What can they do against the Dominion? Just smiled. It was a strange smile for such a young face. It was the smile of someone who knew a secret. You'll see, she said. Back in human space, the Omega fleet had finished gathering. 437 warships floated in formation, 12 dreadnoughts, 50 heavy cruisers, 300 destroyers and frigates, the largest armada humanity had ever assembled. Admiral Lee stood on the bridge of his flagship, the HSS Vengeance, and looked at the fleet on his screens. Every ship was ready. Every soldier was prepared. Every weapon was armed. He opened a channel to the entire fleet. Soldiers of humanity, he said, you have all seen what they did. You have all watched our children being murdered and caged. The aliens thought this would break us. They thought it would make us surrender. They were wrong. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was hard as steel. They thought our children made us weak. They're about to learn that our children are exactly why we fight. We don't fight for territory. We don't fight for glory. We fight because somewhere out there, 847 human children are waiting for us to save them. And we will save them. Every single one. The fleet began to move. Jump drives powered up. Space bent and twisted around the ships. They wanted to teach us a lesson about fear, Admiral Lee said. We're going to teach them a lesson about humanity, a lesson they will never forget, a lesson that will echo through this galaxy for 1,000 years. The fleet vanished into hyperspace, 437 ships, thousands of soldiers, one purpose. The hunt had begun, and they did not even know what was coming. The Dominion had stood for 10,000 years. They had conquered 47 star systems. They had destroyed 17 species. They believed they were the greatest power in the galaxy. In 6 weeks, humanity showed them how wrong they were. The first battle was at the largest military shipyard. 300 alien warships were docked there. 20 orbital platforms bristled with weapons. The commanders believed it was untouchable. Captain and the HSS Retribution arrived first. The commander sent a message. Turn back, human. You face the might of the Dominion. One ship cannot stand against us. Captain did not answer with words. He answered with fire. The Retribution's main weapons were called Star Breakers. They had been designed to destroy planets. Against warships, they were overkill. The first shot vaporized 6 vessels. The second destroyed an entire orbital platform. Then the rest of the human fleet arrived. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it was over, every ship was destroyed. Every platform was gone. The shipyard was dust floating in space. Some commanders tried to surrender. They sent messages begging for mercy. They said they would give information about the children. Captain's response was broadcast across all frequencies. You had the chance to surrender before you touched our children. That chance has passed. He destroyed their ships without hesitation. Across the Dominion, the pattern repeated. Human fleets appeared without warning. They struck hard and fast. They showed no mercy. Major Shin commanded the 77th Drop Infantry. Her soldiers were the best ground fighters humanity had ever trained. They landed on 3 colony worlds in 1 week. On the first world, the military tried to use civilians as shields. Major Shin simply went around them. Her troops destroyed every military base, every weapons factory, every structure that could be used to make war. They killed soldiers. They left civilians alone. On the second world, they laid traps. They hid in tunnels and waited to ambush. Major Shin's troops had thermal sensors that could see through rock. They found every hiding spot. They killed every soldier. On the third world, they tried to fight in the open. It was a mistake. Human weapons were better. Human training was better. human anger was stronger. The battle lasted 2 days. When it ended, not a single soldier was left alive. Major Shin stood in the ruins of a command center and called her commander. "World secure," she reported. "No human casualties. Enemy forces eliminated." "Good work, Major," Admiral Lee replied. "Move to the next target." The Galactic Council watched all of this with growing fear. They were a coalition of 43 spacefaring species who had kept peace in the galaxy for centuries. They had rules about war. They had agreements about how conflicts should be handled. Humanity was ignoring all of them. The Council sent an envoy to Earth, 3 ambassadors from 3 powerful species. They demanded a meeting with human leadership. Ambassador received them. He was an old man, 72 years old, with white hair and a gentle face. He had been a diplomat for 50 years. He believed in peace and understanding. But his grandson had been one of the children killed on New Dawn. He had watched the broadcast. He had seen the small body fall. The alien ambassadors sat across from him in a grand room. The leader, a tall creature with silver scales, spoke first. "Ambassador, the Council demands that humanity cease all military operations immediately. Your attacks are excessive. You are committing genocide against the. This cannot be allowed." Ambassador listened quietly. Then he asked a simple question. "Did any of you try to stop when they broadcast the murder of our children?" The ambassadors shifted uncomfortably. "That is not." "Did any of you offer to help us? Did any of you send ships? Did any of you even send a message saying you were sorry?" "Silence." "They have attacked 17 species," continued. His voice was still gentle, but there was steel underneath. 17 times they have killed children, taken prisoners, forced surrender, and every time your council did nothing. You let them continue because it wasn't your children." He leaned forward. "Well, now it is our children, and we will not stop. Not until every captured child is home. Not until they can never do this again. You can demand whatever you want. It will change nothing." The ambassadors left empty-handed. Meanwhile, doctors' research was being put to use. Special forces teams were hunting queen mothers across the Dominion. These were the most dangerous missions, deep behind enemy lines, but the soldiers volunteered eagerly. Lieutenant Park led a team to a secret bunker where 3 queen mothers were hidden. The bunker was guarded by 1,000 soldiers. Park's team had only 20 people. They went in anyway. The fighting was brutal, close quarters, room by room, but human soldiers were faster, smarter, better trained, and they were fighting for something that they could not understand. Park's team killed all 3 queen mothers. 15 soldiers went in, 8 came out, but the mission was successful. Across the Dominion, queen mothers began to die. 112 became 90, then 70, then 50. Each one that fell meant millions of who would never be born. High Warlord watched his empire crumble and could not understand what was happening. His intelligence had said humans were weak. His advisors had promised easy victory. Instead, he was losing everything. In desperation, he ordered the captured children executed. But the order never arrived. Lieutenant had refused to stay in the hospital. Her shoulder was still healing, but she had demanded to join the rescue mission. "Those are my people's children," she had said. "I was supposed to protect them. Let me finish the job." She led a team of 30 soldiers to Chitra Prime. They landed in secret, using stolen codes. They moved through the shadows, killing guards silently, opening cells quietly. When saw Lieutenant come through the door, she almost cried. But she was a big sister. She had to be strong for. "I told them you'd come," she whispered as picked her up. "We'll always come," said. Her eyes were wet, but her arms were strong. "Always." 847 children were loaded onto evacuation ships. Not one was left behind. Not one was lost. As the ships lifted off, looked down at the world below. She thought about everything she had seen, everything she had heard. "What will happen to them?" she asked. Lieutenant looked at the alien world. She thought about Teacher, who had died protecting her students. She thought about the 412 children who would never go home. "They're going to learn," she said. "What happens when you hurt human children?" Below them, the human fleet was still fighting. Above them, the stars were waiting. The children were safe, but the war was not over yet. Humanity still had a lesson to teach. The children were safe. They were on their way home, surrounded by soldiers who would die before letting anyone hurt them again. 847 young lives saved from the darkness. But Admiral Lee was not finished. The military was shattered. Their fleet was gone. Their shipyards were dust. Their colonies were conquered. Of the 112 Queen Mothers, only 11 remained. The once mighty Dominion had been reduced to a single star system. Admiral Lee faced a choice. He could destroy those last 11 Queen Mothers. He could end the species forever. They would become nothing but a memory, a warning written in ashes. Many of his officers wanted exactly that. They had seen the footage. They had buried the 412 children who would never grow up. They wanted revenge. But Admiral Lee was thinking about something else. He was thinking about what kind of species humanity wanted to be. The Galactic Council sent another message, begging him to stop. Other species were watching. They were afraid that humanity would not stop with they were afraid they might be next. Admiral Lee gathered his senior officers in the war room of the HSS Vengeance. Captain was there. Major Shin was there. Doctor was there. They all waited to hear what he would say. "We have won," the Admiral said. "The children are safe. They can never threaten anyone again. Now we must decide what comes next." Captain spoke first. "Sir, they murdered over 400 children. They would have killed more. They deserve extinction." "They do," Admiral Lee agreed. "But do we deserve to be the ones who deliver it?" Major Shin frowned. "What do you mean?" The Admiral was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I've spent my whole life fighting. I've killed more enemies than I can count. I've done terrible things in the name of protecting humanity, but I've never killed a species. I've never erased a people from existence." He looked at his officers. "They are monsters, but if we destroy them completely, what does that make us? We would become the very thing we're fighting against. We would become a species that commits genocide." Doctor spoke up. "There's another option. We leave them the 11 Queen Mothers, enough to survive but never enough to threaten anyone again. They would live but as a shadow of what they were. They would be a warning to the galaxy, not a memory." Admiral Lee nodded slowly. "That's what I'm thinking. Let them live. Let them remember what they did. Let every born from now on grow up knowing exactly why their empire fell. Let them be a lesson that lasts forever." Captain was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "And if they try again? What if in 100 years or 1,000 they rebuild and come after our children again?" "Then we finish what we started," Admiral Lee said simply. "But we give them one chance to learn, one chance to be better. If they waste it, that's on them." The officers voted. It was not unanimous, but the majority agreed. They would live. Admiral Lee prepared a broadcast. It would be sent to every species in the galaxy, every world, every ship. Everyone would hear what he had to say. He stood in front of the camera and spoke. "People of the galaxy, I am Fleet Admiral Lee of the Terran Defense Force. 6 weeks ago, the Dominion attacked a peaceful human colony. They murdered 412 children. They took 847 more as prisoners. They thought this would make us submit. They were wrong." He paused, letting his words sink in. "We have destroyed the military. We have reduced their empire to a single system. We have taken back our children. We could destroy them completely. We have the power, but we have chosen not to." His voice hardened. "We have chosen to let them live as a warning. Every who is ever born will learn from their first breath what happens when you hurt human children. They will live with that knowledge forever. They will pass it down to their children and their children's children. They will never forget. He looked directly into the camera. And neither will the rest of you. We are not conquerors. We are not empire builders. We don't want your worlds or your resources. We just want to live in peace, raise our families, and explore the stars. But if anyone threatens our children, we will respond. And our response will be swift, terrible, and absolute. He straightened his uniform. Humanity protects its young. Cross that line and there is no force in the universe that will save you. This is not a threat. This is a promise. Remember it. The broadcast ended. On Earth, the surviving children of New Dawn were welcomed as heroes. Crowds lined the streets as their ships landed. People waved flags and cheered and cried. Walked down the ramp holding his hand. Their parents were waiting at the bottom. Their mother fell to her knees and grabbed them both, holding them so tight it almost hurt. "I knew you'd come back," said into her mother's shoulder. "I knew." Later, at a special ceremony, Admiral Lee met with the children personally. He knelt down to speak to at her level. His old knees protested, but he didn't care. "I heard about you," he said. "I heard you kept the other children calm. I heard you were very brave." Blushed, "I was scared." "Brave doesn't mean not being scared," the Admiral said. "Brave means being scared and doing the right thing anyway. You did that. You're a hero." She was quiet for a moment. Then she asked the question that had been on her mind since the rescue. "Will they ever hurt children again?" Admiral Lee thought about the destroyed fleets, the conquered colonies, the 11 queen mothers struggling to rebuild a species that would never recover. He thought about the message he had sent to the galaxy. He thought about all the eyes that were watching. "No," he said, "never again. We made sure of that." Nodded, she seemed satisfied with the answer. 6 months later, New Dawn was rebuilt. New houses stood where the old ones had burned. A new school rose where the central learning complex had been. Children played in the streets again, their laughter filling the air. They built a memorial for the 412 who didn't come home. Teacher's name was at the top. Flowers covered the ground around it, fresh ones every day. Lieutenant stayed on New Dawn. She became the head of a new security force, one with real weapons and real training. She trained young men and women to protect the colony. She taught them what she had learned. "The galaxy is beautiful," she told them, "but it's also dangerous. We hope for peace, but we prepare for war. And we never, ever let anyone threaten our children." On the now their only world, the survivors struggled to rebuild. Their population was a fraction of what it had been. Their power was gone. Their empire was dust. But they remembered. Oh, how they remembered. Young were taught the story from birth. Humans look weak. Humans seem soft, but never ever harm their children. The consequences are too terrible to imagine. And across the galaxy, other species learned the same lesson. They watched the footage. They read the reports. They understood. Humanity would negotiate. Humanity would trade. Humanity would even forgive past wrongs. But harm their children, and humanity would end you. Not because they were the strongest species, not because they were but because when it came to protecting their young, humans had no limits, no boundaries, no mercy. Some prices were simply too high to pay. The stars kept shining. The colonies kept growing. Children kept being born, kept laughing, kept dreaming of the future. And somewhere in the quiet of space, the sleeping giants returned to their slumber. But they could always be awakened again. If anyone was foolish enough to make the same mistake twice,